Hi, my name is David Midell, and I'm the writer and director of The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain.
My name is Enrico Natale. I'm the producer and actor.
I would say both. We worked very closely with the Chamberlain family. We found out a lot of information about Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. through the family. We also had access to a lot of documentation. There are audio. There's documentary evidence of this actual incident in the forms of audio recordings and video recordings that we also studied pretty heavily and based a lot of the script on. So I guess it was a combination of a lot of the elements that are seen in the film are directly pulled from the video and audio, but we also wanted to I guess sort of expand the story a little bit, because this is not, this is not just a problem that's in White Plains, New York. This is something that occurs all over the United States and all over the world, really. And we wanted to, open up a discussion about, issues of institutional discrimination and police brutality nationwide and around the world, rather than just keeping it so specific to this one area. Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty early decision. I think from one of our first conversations, we talked about shooting it all handheld, given that the story pretty much plays out in real time. We wanted it to have sort of that visceral, kinetic feeling. Right.
We really like the idea of just, the audience feeling the claustrophobia of the moment, just outside of the door and inside the apartment, and just, nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go but that space. And I think, the handheld movement and the hits, the sounds, all kind of add to that. There's really nothing happy about the story, and we felt it necessary to, that was a big thing. We can't sugarcoat this, this is what it is. And so that's why the title of the movie is The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain, and so it's intense, to say the least, and as it goes on, it just gets, but we wanted you to live in Kenneth's world from the time he wakes up to the time he dies. And so we focused a lot of that in editing on making sure that, you're just kind of living in the moment with him until his life is taken.
And it wouldn't have made sense to sanitize elements of it, just because Enrico's right. We wanted that kind of, like you said, sense of uncomfortability and claustrophobia to we wanted the audience to sense that as well. It's definitely not. It's not a feel-good movie, because we're asking some uncomfortable questions about the way law enforcement in the criminal justice system treats people of color, the way law enforcement in the criminal justice system treats people suffering from mental health issues, and whether there is some bias in the criminal justice system just based on the zip code that you live in. Would these officers have reacted the same way to him if he had lived in the Hamptons or in Beverly Hills or something like that? And it's asking some uncomfortable questions, and we wanted the audience to feel that. It sort of happened naturally. I mean, we had a couple different locations that we were looking into, and a couple of them fell through, and we found this location. It's a really interesting space with you have a couple stairs, then a landing, then a couple more, then you turn 90 degrees, then you have a couple more stairs, then a landing. So it kind of gave us some interesting opportunities to play some of those power dynamics, especially with Enrico's character. As his character kind of gets throughout the film kind of subjugated to the sidelines more and more and more. And there were some really interesting ways that we could play with those power dynamics with the geography of that space. Right. That's one of the things that I really wanted to explore with the film, because I taught special education for years, and I worked with people with mental health issues and people with autism. And one of the things that we had to do in that field was go through really extensive crisis management training, and we had to learn how to intervene in how to intervene with somebody having a mental health crisis in a way that keeps the person safe, keeps you safe, and keeps everyone else around you safe. And a big part of that is learning the appropriate body language to use, the appropriate tone of voice to use, what types of demands, if any demands, do you place on the person in crisis, and how do you guide that person through the process of de-escalation in a way that keeps everybody safe and ends safely. And one of the things that I wanted to explore with the film was these different mindsets about crisis intervention, because that's basically what they're doing. I mean, what it becomes, the situation becomes a crisis on both ends, and some of the officers have a more old school approach, and some of the officers have a more modern, newer approach. It's not a coincidence that there are several references to Enrico's character being new on the police force. He's new on the police force. He may have more modern training. Police departments are doing more training for officers on how to handle difficult situations with people with mental health issues, but there's still not enough. There's still not nearly enough, and I
think it's important to add, like, there's a pack mentality with police officers. I mean, someone like Officer Rossi, it's really difficult for him to stand up and say something, and for everyone else it's because he's going against the pack, right? He's going against the pack leader, and so this is a very real thing that happens in our situation today in America, and I think we really do crisis intervention. How many hours in every year
we had to go very extensive initial trainings, and then we had to maintain our certifications by going to additional trainings and review seminars for all these crisis intervention techniques. Very, very extensive training.
So,
and
with 25% of shootings involve someone with mental illness. So if you look at it that way, it's like, and what is it? 10 hours of their 825 hours of training is for how to deal with someone with mental illness. 10 hours, and when it's a quarter of their shootings, like, it's just they're just not trained enough, and that's just really the nuts and bolts of it, is that they need proper training to deal with people with mental illness, because it is an epidemic in our country right now. And if you don't know how to deal with someone with mental illness, how do you expect police officers who put themselves in danger all the time? And quite literally, what he said, they went to a zip code, that they probably arrested 30 people in the last month for drug use and everything. So they have this already preconceived notion that this person is probably a drug user. This person is probably, and so, how do you get that out of their head? And so there's a lot of questions that we have to try to kind of answer as a society, and like, how do we train these officers to better equip them to handle these situations? Because this isn't right. They were called there for a wellness check. They were supposed to check on his wellness, and he's dead. That's not okay.
And there was also, obviously, it's impossible to deny that there was a racial component to it as well, because racial epithets were used, and those. It's been interesting, because when we've shown the film to friends of ours and people like that, some of them have been surprised at the use of the racial epithets. Many people assumed that we just made that up for the film, that was just a dramatization, that we added that in for dramatic purposes. But they're surprised when at the end of the film we show a couple of minutes of the actual footage, and they actually hear the racial epithets being used. They hear the N-word used by the officers. So as much as mental health was certainly an aspect of the reason this incident got out of control, it's impossible to deny that race was a factor as well, that they were biased against Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. because of his race.
Probably because he just read the training manual, and just like it was fresh in his mind, and then like he had a better idea of what was standard supposed to be done. And like, you know, he's just trying to follow that when people have been on it for years and years and years and years, and it's just like, I have experience. I already know what to do with all this stuff. Don't tell me what's in the manual. Like, that's used, and I think that that's a very real thing that's faced, and you know, some person who's new maybe knows that something's not being done right, but how's he going to tell the pack leader what to do?
Right, and our goal wasn't to demonize all the officers either. You know, I think that we present the situation as, you know, like you said, some of these officers are confused about what to do. They're not sure. It's clear that they don't have the training that they would need for a situation like this. So, you know, our goal was not to demonize all the officers or to demonize police in general. Certainly, it was more to ask questions about, you know, are police departments being trained adequately? Are police departments recruiting the right types of people with the right personality traits for jobs like this? You know, the goal was more to ask questions than you know, demonize police in general. That's a hard question.
Look, when I was in college, I made 2 feature films in college, and I had no idea what I was doing. This is back, I'm not gonna age myself, but this is a while ago. I literally picked up a handheld camera, I wrote a script, and I was like, hey, you guys wanna make a movie? And I went around and I made a movie. And I edited it, and I put it all together, and like, you know, will I ever show them to people now? Of course not. But I learned an immense amount about doing it, and so the best thing I could say is just pick up a camera and do it. Or if you don't know how to pick up a camera, find someone who does know how to pick up a camera and gather some people together and make something, because the best thing you're gonna do is learn. You're gonna learn how to do. I learned so much just from that one situation and putting myself in, you know, and forcing myself to edit something. I had no idea how to edit. I think I was using Pinnacle at the time or something. And you know, I was just figuring it out, but I did. I figured it out and I made an entire feature film. And then I did it again 2 years later. Like, and then since then I've made 18 feature films, and like, I think, you know, you just push yourself to continue to do it, and like, start with a short. If a feature's too much for you, start with something small. Start with a 2-minute idea. I mean, like, there's just so many avenues to do it now, but the absolute best way to do it is just commit to doing it. Say you're gonna do it and do it. Give yourself a deadline. I say this all the time. Deadlines are like what has pushed my career forward. My wife makes fun of me all the time because I'll be like writing a script and you know, I want to get to end of Act 1 by Monday night, and you know, Monday night's there, and I'm you know, typing away, and she's just like, can we just go out? Like, just do this tomorrow. And I'm like, no, I gave myself a deadline on Monday night. And she's like, who cares? Like, why can't you just finish it tomorrow? And I was like, because I gave myself a deadline. And I like to follow deadlines as much as possible because you get stuff done. And so deadlines, and just get up and do it. And those are the 2 biggest things I can say.
And I would just say, what worked for me was when I stopped writing what I thought other people wanted. Like, I felt like, you know, I felt like, oh, I have to write a comedy because I should have a comedy that I can talk to people about, and I should write a thriller because I should have a thriller that I should talk about, you know, with people. And what worked for me was when people really started responding to my writing was when I just started writing a script about a subject that I thought was nobody would ever be interested in. Nobody would ever be interested in it. It was just for me because I was fascinated by the subject. And I got so much more response from that script than I ever did from anything else. So that kind of helped me realize that what works for me is writing what I'm passionate about instead of trying to fit myself into a box like of a certain genre or oh, I should follow this formula because this is what they want to see with the formula. As soon as I stopped doing that, that's when people really started responding to what I was doing.